I was kneeling at a stranger's grave, ugly, crying like my whole world had just been ripped open again, when a woman in a $10,000 coat marched up and said, "That's my husband's grave. Who are you?" She had no idea her husband was the man who killed my wife and unborn son, then drove away like our lives were nothing. And she definitely didn't expect that I had his confession recorded on my phone, ready to blow her perfect little world to pieces. My name is Malik Carter. I'm a black single dad. I'm a mechanic who smells like oil more than cologne most days. And I never in a million years thought I'd end up in a standoff with a millionaire widow in the middle of a cemetery, with a secret recording in my pocket, and my daughter waiting at home, asking when Daddy's finally going to stop crying at graves. But here we are. If it were you, what would you have done? Walked away? Or pressed play? That day at the cemetery, the wind was cutting right through my jacket, one of those late fall afternoons, where the sky is too bright and too cold at the same time, and the grass around the grave was still new. Still. That raw, unhealthy green that says the dirt hasn't settled yet. I wasn't there for him. Not at first. I was there for my wife, Tasha, and for the little boy. We never got to meet. Their grave is simple, a flat stone, with both their names because I couldn't afford anything taller. And sometimes that still eats at me. You know what I mean? Like love should buy marble, not concrete. I was talking to Tasha the way I always do out loud, like a crazy person telling her about our daughter, about how Maya had gotten an A on her science test, and how she still sleeps with the same purple bunny about the leak in the apartment ceiling that the landlord refuses to fix, about how tired I am, how heavy everything feels. And then I looked up, and my eyes drifted like they always do now, to the stone 3 rows up. The one that says, Daniel Caldwell, beloved husband. Visionary leader. That grave makes my blood pressure spike every single time. Daniel Caldwell, the city's golden boy. Real estate mogul philanthropist. Man of the year on every magazine. The guy whose face is on the side of the hospital wing he donated. The man everybody cried over when he had that sudden heart attack in his sleep. Rich people grief televised and catered. The man who left my wife to die in the street like roadkill. So yeah, I was on my knees in front of his grave talking to my dead wife and staring at this polished stone that covered his body, asking God for the 1,000th time why justice feels so expensive when I heard heels clicking behind me. Sharp, fast, annoyed heels. I didn't turn right away. I was mid-sentence with Tasha, and then this voice, smooth, cold, practiced, cut through the air. "Excuse me, that's my husband's grave. Who are you, and what do you think you're doing here?" I wiped my face with the back of my hand and stood up slow. Because I'm a big guy, and I've learned not to move fast when rich white people are already on edge. The woman in front of me, she looked like money, and control had been stitched into her bones. Late 30s perfect blowout black wool coat that probably cost more than my car. Little diamond studs, so tasteful they screamed old money, more than the big flashy stuff. "I asked you a question," she said, narrowing her eyes. "Who are you?" I looked from her to the stone to her again. "Name's Malik," I said. "And I'm here because your husband killed my family." Her face did this little twitch, like she couldn't decide whether to be offended, or scared, or amused. "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "Daniel died of a heart attack. He never killed anyone in his life. Whatever scam you're trying to pull, it's not going to work on me." Scam. Yeah, that word hit like a slap. I took a breath because the old me would have gone off right there, and I've seen enough cell phone videos to know how that story ends. "Ma'am," I said, "I'm not here for your money. I've had enough of your husband's money to last me a lifetime." She blinked. Just once, but I saw it. That crack in the armor. "What are you talking about?" she asked, but her voice had shifted just a little. I nodded toward the bench by the path. "This isn't a 5-second conversation," I said. "You really want to know why a stranger is crying at your husband's grave, or you just want me off your grass?" Her jaw tightened. For a second, I thought she'd tell me to leave. Then she did something that surprised me. She sat down. "5 minutes," she said, "and if you're lying, I will have security escort you out of here." She had no idea that 5 minutes was about to rip open everything she thought she knew. She had no idea I'd already lived this story once with her husband, and that I had the receipts. So let me back up, because to understand that bench, that grave, that woman, you have to know how I got there. Before all this, my life was loud and messy and beautiful in that broke family way. Me and Tasha and our little girl in a 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. Everything smelling like detergent and fried chicken from the spot next door. I worked at a small auto shop on the east side, 12-hour days, 6 days a week. Hands swollen and black with grease, but the kind of tired that feels honest, like you earned your sleep. Tasha was a teacher's aide at the elementary school and worked nights at a diner when we fell behind on bills. We were always behind on bills. We'd been together since high school through dumb choices and cheap rings, and that 15-year-old ride or die promise that somehow we actually kept. When we found out she was pregnant again, after years of trying, it felt like the universe was finally throwing us a bone. A baby boy this time, doctor said. Maya was so excited, she made him a little onesie that said, "Lil Man," in crooked fabric paint. Tasha had that glow people talk about. And yeah, I know it sounds corny, but I loved watching her just fold laundry and hum one hand on her belly like it was a second heartbeat. We didn't have much, but we had plans. I was going to try to buy into the garage, maybe get my own spot in 5 years. Tasha wanted to finish her degree, become a teacher. We were going to move out of that apartment, give the kids a yard. Nothing wild, just normal dreams. Then one Tuesday night blew everything up. It was raining that night, one of those heavy summer storms, where the water bounces off the pavement, the sky flashing every few seconds. I remember because I almost called Tasha and told her to wait at the diner until it slowed down, but I didn't want to nag her. I just sat on the couch with Maya watching some cartoon, thinking about how tired I was. Around 9:30, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't pick up. "Mr. Carter," a voice said. "This is Officer Jenkins with the Metro Police. There's been an accident. If you've ever gotten that call, you know. Your body knows before your brain does." The room went fuzzy. My ears started ringing. "What happened?" I asked. Not even a question mark. Just flat. "Your wife and daughter were crossing at 8th and Willow," he said. "A vehicle failed to stop at the light and struck your wife. The driver left the scene. Your daughter's physically okay, she's with us. Your wife is being transported to St. Mary's. You need to get there right away." I don't remember the drive. I remember my keys slipping out of my hands. I remember Maya crying and asking, "Is Mommy okay? Daddy, is Mommy okay?" Over and over until I wanted to scream. And I remember the hospital lights, that too bright white, that makes everyone look like a ghost. They sat us in a little room with beige walls and a coffee machine that didn't work, and time just stretched. Then the doctor came in with that face, that soft, practiced, I do this every day face. "Tasha had severe internal injuries," he said. "We did everything we could, but she and the baby didn't make it. I'm so sorry." Everything after that was noise. Maya screaming. Me trying not to knock over the table. A nurse handing me a box of tissues like that would do anything. The word "hit and run" echoing in my head like a drum. You know how they say grief comes in stages like anger, denial, bargaining, acceptance. All that. I didn't get stages. I got a bomb. A week later, we buried Tasha and the baby together in a shared grave, because that's what we could afford. The pastor said nice things. People brought casseroles. My aunt pressed $20 bills into my hand like bandages. And the whole time there was this question eating me alive. Who hit her? Who saw my wife and baby in their headlights and decided their schedule mattered more than their lives? The cops said there was ongoing investigation. There were fragments of shattered headlight and some paint on the asphalt, that was it. No cameras at that intersection. No clear eyewitnesses. Officer Jenkins looked tired when he told me they were doing all they could. They always say that, my cousin muttered. You think they'd be moving this slow if it was one of their wives? I wanted to believe justice was blind, that the system would work if I just waited. If I just trusted. But every week that went by without a phone call, every time I saw another news story about a hit and run that remained unsolved, I felt something in me hardening. Bills piled up. Hospital bills. Funeral bills. The rent. The diner job was gone. Tasha's paycheck vanished. And suddenly my mechanic's salary didn't stretch far enough. I pawned what I could. We cut everything that wasn't food or lights. Maya started having nightmares, waking up screaming that Mommy was out in the rain and couldn't find her way home. I'd sit on the edge of her bed, rubbing her back until she fell asleep, staring at that damn ceiling stain from the leak the landlord still wouldn't fix. Here's the part nobody tells you about grief. It's expensive. Death hits, and then the bills hit, and the world just keeps moving, clocking in and out, scrolling through TikTok, while you're stuck in this slow-motion car crash that never ends. A few weeks after the funeral, a detective finally came by the apartment. I remember looking at his suit, the nice watch, thinking maybe he's here with something real, some justice. We think we might have a lead, he said. There was a witness who remembers a dark SUV, possible luxury model, leaving the scene at high speed. We pulled footage from nearby traffic cams. We're trying to identify the vehicle. Do you know who it belongs to? I asked, heart pounding. We're working on it, he said. But I'm going to be honest with you, Mr. Carter. These cases are tough. I don't want to give you false hope. Do you think that's fair, by the way, that a man can kill your family with a car? And it's just tough to figure out who did it. Time kept moving. I kept working. I went from 12-hour days to 16, doing side jobs in people's driveways after the shop closed. Maya did homework on a crate in the garage, while I changed brakes and oil breathing in fumes and asking questions about everything, because she's curious like her mom. Every day, I'd drive past 8th and Willow, slow down at that light, stare at the little memorial someone had left. Flowers, a teddy bear, a photo of Tasha with Maya that I still don't know who printed. I'd sit there until the person behind me honked. Sometimes I imagined I'd see the car come through again, same pattern, same speed. Sometimes I imagined throwing myself on the hood. Then the money ran out. One afternoon, a lady from the bank sat at my little wobbly table with a stack of papers, explaining in a soft voice that the grace period on the missed payments was over, foreclosure was starting. I had 30 days. She talked about options, like renting, moving in with family bankruptcy. I stared at her lips moving and thought the person who killed my wife is probably having lunch delivered to their office right now. The next day, my boss pulled me into the back. "Malik, I got a call from Caldwell Logistics," he said. "They need night mechanics at their fleet yard. Pays almost double what I can give you benefits too. I don't want to lose you, but I also don't want to see you drown." Caldwell. I'd seen that name everywhere. Caldwell Tower. Caldwell Children's Hospital, Caldwell Arts Center. The smiling face of Daniel Caldwell, shaking hands with mayors and governors. "Why are they hiring now?" I asked. He scratched his head. Word is the owner had some health scare. People are nervous, they want everything tight. I don't know, man. I just know it's more money. That's how grief works, too. It'll make you take a job at the empire you hate because your kid needs to eat. So I started working nights at the Caldwell Fleet Yard. Rows and rows of shiny trucks with the Caldwell logo, all that power and fuel lined up under bright lights. It felt like walking into another world, everything organized and sterile, security cameras on every corner, guards checking your badge at the gate. They gave us uniforms with our names embroidered benefits packet in a thick folder. We were disposable, but neatly disposable. On the walls in the break room, there were photos of Daniel Caldwell, breaking ground on buildings, smiling with kids at charity events, shaking hands with athletes. There was even one of him cutting the ribbon at St. Mary's new trauma center, the same hospital where my wife died on a gurney with a sheet over her face. I remember standing there in my greasy boots looking up at his smile on that poster, thinking you have no idea who I am, but your car knows my wife's bones. Then one night, about 4 months after the accident, I saw him in real life. Caldwell wasn't supposed to come down to the yard from what I'd heard. He was a boardroom man, a ribbon cutter, not a grease guy. But there he was, stepping out of a black SUV under the lights, surrounded by 2 suit-and-tie security guys, walking the rows of trucks like a king inspecting his horses. I froze under the hood of a rig, watching him through the gap. Tall, silver hair, that tan rich people seem to get from vacations instead of sunlight, the kind of confidence that comes from never having to wait in line. He laughed at something one of the suits said, clapped a guy on the shoulder. He moved like someone who had never once wondered if the light bill would get paid. And for a second I thought maybe it's not him. Maybe I'm just projecting all my rage onto this man because he's convenient, because he looks like every drunk driver who ever said, "I'll be fine. I can make it," and then wasn't. Then he walked right past the cab of the truck, and my heart stopped. The SUV he'd stepped out of, the one waiting with its lights off by the fence, had a crack in the right headlight housing. A small one near the bottom, like someone had hit something low and hard with the corner of the bumper. Just like the pieces they'd pulled off 8th and Willow, my hands started shaking. I told myself maybe there are a million SUVs like that. Maybe that crack is from a curb. Maybe I'm seeing what I want to see. But the feeling in my gut, it was the same cold punch I got when the hospital called. That deep, "this is it" feeling. Now here's where it gets weird. 2 nights later, they called all the night shift guys into the break room. We're standing there in our uniforms, smelling like diesel and sweat, and in walks Daniel Caldwell. Again, no security this time, just him. And that smile. He thanked us for our service, talked about how we kept the company moving, how his father started with 1 truck and a dream, all that corporate folklore. Then he said, "Before I go, I want to speak to one of you privately." His eyes scanned the room and landed on me. Of course they did. "Mr. Cartwright," he said. "Malik, could I borrow you for a moment?" Every head turned. My co-worker Tony elbowed me, whispering, "Damn what you do win the lottery or mess up real bad." I followed Caldwell out to a little glass-walled conference room off the main office, my heart beating so hard I could feel it in my teeth. He closed the door, and for the first time I was alone in a room with the man whose cracked headlight I'd been staring at for days. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to a chair. I stayed standing. "So," I said. "What did I do?" He studied me for a second like I was a puzzle. "You lost your wife recently," he said. "Not a question." My throat closed. "Yeah," I said. "How do you know that?" "The HR file mentioned bereavement leave," he said, "and I recognized your name from a police report." That cold feeling ran straight down my spine. "A hit and run at 8th and Willow," he continued. "Tragic. She was pregnant, wasn't she? Why do you know that?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. "Because I killed her. That's what my brain was yelling. Say it. Say it out loud. He didn't. Not yet. Instead, he went to the little counter in the corner, poured himself a glass of water from a pitcher, and his hand shook. Just a little, but I saw it. He took a sip, set the glass down carefully. I've been having some health issues, he said. My cardiologist says I need to reduce stress. I find that honesty helps. Okay, I said slowly. And what does that have to do with me? He looked up, and for the first time the public mask slipped just a crack. There was a flash of fear, or maybe shame, I couldn't tell. I believe we're connected, you and I, he said. In a way I'm deeply not proud of. Silence. The hum of the fluorescent lights, the distant beep of a truck backing up outside. You were there, I said. It came out more like an accusation than a question. At 8th and Willow. He closed his eyes just for a second. I was driving home from a fundraiser, he said. It was raining. I'd had more to drink than I should have. I took that intersection on a yellow light. She stepped out, I hit the brakes, but I was going too fast. My vision tunneled. My hands curled into fists so tight my nails dug into my palms. You left her there, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded calm, almost casual. That's how you know you're at the edge of something terrible, when your voice goes still. I panicked, he said. I called my lawyer before I called 911. He advised me to leave the scene, come straight home. He said we would handle it quietly, that nothing good could come from me staying there, that I would only make it worse. I listened. I shouldn't have, but I did. And I've been waking up at 3 a.m., ever since seeing her face in my headlights. There it was. The thing I'd imagined 100 different ways finally in words. I should have jumped across the table. I should have knocked that glass out of his hand, put my hands around his throat, called the cops right then and there. That's what the angry voice in my head says when I replay that scene. Instead, something else clicked in my brain. The little survival switch you develop when the world has already taken too much from you. While he was talking, while my heart was breaking all over again, my hand slipped into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and hit record. Yeah, that happened. So why are you telling me this now? I asked. Why not confess to the police, to the news, to all those cameras you like so much? He smiled, but it was wrecked nothing like the billboards. I am confessing, he said. To you, the person most affected. My lawyer would have a stroke if he knew I was doing this. I've set aside a considerable amount of money anonymously to help with your expenses. The hospital bills, the mortgage, your daughter's education. You should be receiving notice from the estate office any day now. Let me ask you something. If the person who killed your family tried to pay you off, called it help, would you take it? Money, I said, my lip curling. You think money fixes this? It doesn't fix it, he said quickly. Nothing fixes it, but it can make your life easier. I can't undo what I've done, Malik. I can only try to lessen the weight on you going forward. I stared at him. And in return, I said slowly, you want what? Silence. His jaw tightened. I'd like to avoid a public circus, he admitted. The company employs thousands of people. A scandal like this could hurt them, hurt their families, destabilize everything we've built. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve that. I'm asking that you consider what good can still come from this, instead of focusing on punishment. There it was. The rich man pitch. Weigh your anger against everyone else's paycheck. Be a hero by staying quiet. I felt sick. So my wife's life is a liability on your balance sheet, I said. Good to know. He flinched. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant, I shot back. You want to carry your guilt in private and buy my silence so your face stays on hospital walls. He rubbed his chest, wincing like his heart hurt. Good, I thought. Let it. I don't expect you to understand my position, he said. I only hope you'll consider what's best for your daughter. Courts are slow, messy, cruel. A settlement through my estate office would be cleaner. And what about what's right? I asked him. Do you ever think about that? Or just what's clean? He looked tired. He suddenly looked very old. What's right? He repeated softly. If I could go back to that night, I would get out of that car. Kneel beside your wife. Hold her hand. Until the ambulance came. I would take the breathalyzer, the field test, the mug shot, the trial. I'd do it all. But I can't. All I can do now is write checks and tell the truth to the person who deserves it most. He stood up like the conversation was over. You'll be contacted by my estate office, he said. If you choose not to accept the settlement, that's your right. If you choose to go to the police with what I've told you, my lawyers will fight. But in the end, maybe that's what I deserve. Then he walked out, leaving me standing there with my phone still, recording, my mouth open, my whole body shaking. Pattern interrupt. 3 days later, he was dead. Massive heart attack in his sleep, the news said. Peaceful. Family by his side. Tributes poured in. Politicians tweeted. The flags at the Fleet Yard flew at half-mast. We all got an email saying grief counselors were available if we needed them, that the company would go on, that Mr. Caldwell's legacy would live forever. You want to talk about rage. Watching people cry over the man who confessed to killing your wife, listening to them talk about his kindness and generosity, while you're trying to explain to your 9-year-old why mommy's not coming back. A week after he died, an envelope showed up at my apartment from the Caldwell estate office. Inside was a letter with a lot of legal words, and a number at the bottom that made my head spin. Enough to pay off every bill. Buy a house, put Maya through college, maybe even let me quit night shifts and actually sleep. There was also a non-disclosure agreement thick as a phone book. I sat at that same wobbly kitchen table where the bank lady had told me we were losing the apartment, and I stared at that number until the ink blurred. Maya was in the bedroom humming to herself, making the baby brother she never got into a superhero in her drawings. My hands shook, holding that pen. If it were you, I'm asking you now, what would you have done? Signed and secured your kid's future, or ripped that check in half and gone to war with a dead man's lawyers? I didn't sign. Not that day. Instead, I took the bus to the cemetery. At first, I just went to Tasha's grave like always. I sat there, told her about the confession, about the money, about how part of me wanted to spit on his grave, and part of me wanted to take everything he'd ever owned and give it to people like us. I asked her what to do like she could answer. The wind rustled the grass. Somewhere, a lawnmower droned. No miracles. Then I noticed it. The fresh patch of dirt, uphill the fancy stone, not even fully engraved yet. Daniel Caldwell. I walked up there slowly, heart pounding, and just stared. You got the easy way out, I muttered. No trial, no mugshot, no cell. Just fell asleep in your silk sheets and never woke up. The longer I stood there, the angrier I got. I started talking louder words, pouring out all the stuff I'd been holding back. I told him about Maya's nightmares, about the foreclosure notice, about how his SUV's cracked headlight haunted me every time I closed my eyes. I told him how dare he offer to buy my silence, how dare he call that justice. I'm pretty sure I cursed a lot. That's where Olivia found me. I didn't know her name then. Just saw the black car pull up. Driver hold an umbrella as she stepped out heels, digging into the damp grass. She walked straight toward us with purpose, like someone who owned the whole cemetery. "Excuse me," she said, her voice slicing through my rant. "That's my husband's grave. Who are you, and what do you think you're doing here?" Because from her angle, all she saw was a big black man yelling at her husband's headstone. We're back where I started. On that bench, she sat with her coat wrapped tight, holding herself like a judge, and I told her my name. I told her about Tasha. I told her about 8th and Willow and the rain and the doctor saying we did everything we could. I watched her eyes flick to my hands, to my clothes, to the cheap hoodie I'd thrown on. And I saw the moment she slotted me into one of those mental boxes she probably keeps for angry poor people. She was quiet for a minute. "I read about that accident," she said finally. "It was in the paper. I didn't connect the names." Of course she didn't. "You're telling me," she went on, "that my husband hit your wife with his car, left her there, and then confessed it to you, privately." "I'm not telling you," I said. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice recorder app. My thumb hovered over the file for a second, because once you play something like that, there's no going back. Then I hit play. His voice filled the little space between us, calm and rich through the tiny speaker. He talked about the rain, about the fundraiser, about the yellow light, about listening to his lawyer and driving away. He said my wife's name. He said the word hit and run. He said, "I killed her." He said, "I set aside a considerable amount of money." He said, "I'd like to avoid a public circus." I watched Olivia's face while she listened. At first she went pale, like the blood drained right out. Then her jaw clenched, and she stared straight ahead, not at me, not at the phone. Her fingers dug into the bench so hard her knuckles turned white. When the recording ended, there was this weird quiet, like even the birds stopped to hear what she'd say. "That could be fake," she said, but her voice was softer, less sure. "AI makes all kinds of things now. Deepfakes, whatever." "Sure," I said. "But AI didn't tell me about the anonymous settlement offer before your estate office mailed it. AI didn't put a crack in your SUV's headlight that matches the fragments from the scene. AI didn't make the lawyer call me this morning, asking if I had any concerns about the NDA before I signed." She flinched again. That last part hit. "Why are you really here?" she asked after a long minute. "If you have this recording, if what you're saying is true, why aren't you in a police station? Why aren't you on TV?" "Because your husband's dead," I said bluntly. "And dragging his name through the mud won't bring my wife back. It'll hurt the company. The employee's your image, sure, but I'm not sure it gives me anything except another full-time job as the man who took down Daniel Caldwell. My daughter has already lost enough." "So what do you want from me?" she whispered. There it was. The twist. "Funny you ask," I said, "because I didn't think I wanted anything from you, except maybe for you to know your husband wasn't the saint on these posters. But then your lawyer called, and he said something that made all of this feel a little different." Her eyes flicked to mine. "What did he say?" "He said," I replied, mimicking the slick tone, "Mr. Carter, we know you're going through a difficult time, and we'd like to help you move forward. In exchange for your discretion, Mrs. Caldwell is prepared to be very generous. It's better for everyone if this stays private." Her face changed. Not surprised, not offended. Resigned. That's when I understood. She had already known. "You weren't shocked when you heard his voice," I said slowly. "Not really. You looked trapped. How long have you known?" She stared at the grave. For a long second, I thought she'd stand up and walk away. Then her shoulders slumped. "The night it happened," she said quietly. "He came home shaking. There was a dent in the bumper glass in the grill. He went straight to his study and told me not to come in. I went in anyway. He was on the phone with Victor, his lawyer. I heard enough to put it together." My stomach dropped. This part I hadn't expected. I thought she'd be another victim of his secrets. Turns out she was a co-author. "What did you do?" I asked, my voice tight. "I wanted to call the police," she said quickly. "I really did. But Victor insisted we wait to get the full story, see what the damage was. He said if we called, and it turned out to be a minor accident, Daniel's name would be dragged through the mud for nothing. He said people like you would see dollar signs." "People like me," I repeated, letting the words hang. She winced. "That's what he said. Not me. At least not at first." "And then," I pressed, "and then the news came on," she whispered, and they were talking about a hit and run at 8th and Willow, about a pregnant woman in critical condition, about a husband and child. Daniel threw up in the sink. Victor told us to say nothing, to stay calm, to let him handle it. He said without a license plate or clear footage, they'd never tie it to Daniel. He said going to the police now would destroy everything we'd built. He said we could do more good for the world by continuing our work than by sacrificing ourselves on the altar of one tragedy. One tragedy. That's what my family was, a PR problem. And you listened, I said. She nodded, tears slipping down, now ruining the perfect makeup. I told myself we'd find a way to help anonymously, she said. Pay the bills, set up a scholarship. I told myself jail wouldn't bring your wife back, but would ruin thousands of employees' lives. All the same lies rich people tell themselves to sleep at night. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I fought harder than I did. I chose my husband. I chose our reputation. I let you carry the weight. Pattern interrupt. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just sitting next to a grieving widow. I was sitting next to someone who helped bury the truth right along with my wife. Do you think that's fair? I asked her, turning fully to face her. That you and your husband and your lawyer get to decide whose lives are worth sacrificing for the greater good. She didn't answer. She just cried for a minute quietly, the sound of a person who's very used to crying where nobody can see. Why are you telling me this? I asked. You could have stuck with the AI fake story called Security, had me banned from here. Because you came here instead of going on TV, she said. Because you've had that recording for months and you didn't destroy me with it. Because if I lie to you now, I think it might finish whatever is left of my soul. There was a long silence. The wind picked up, rustling the trees. Somewhere down the path, someone else was crying at someone else's grave. Have I guessed? Here's the thing, I finally said. I could take your money. Sign your NDA, move Maya into a better school. Buy a little backyard. Pretend none of this ever happened. Or I could take this recording to the DA, to the news, watch your husband's name turn into a curse, and your company's stock drop like a rock. Neither of those feels like justice. One feels like selling my wife's memory. The other feels like inviting a war that might swallow me and my daughter whole. Then what do you want? She whispered. I looked at Tasha's grave, then at Daniel's. I want my wife back, I said. But since that's not on the table, I want something that might actually change something, not just punish one dead man and one living woman. She frowned. Like what? This is going to sound insane, I said, half laughing, because even in my head it felt wild. But you and your husband built a chain of hospitals, after-school programs, scholarships, right? You like to put his name on wings and libraries. What if instead of a quiet payoff and a prayer, we put his name on a law? Her eyes narrowed. A law. A Daniel and Tasha Road Safety Act. I don't know, I said, words tumbling. Stricter penalties for hit-and-run, mandatory cameras at busy intersections, funds for victims' families, that kind of thing. You bankroll it. I stand next to you and tell the truth about what your husband did. You stand next to me and own your part in covering it up. We don't lie, we don't spin. We turn your guilt into something that might save somebody else's wife. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You want me to blow up my own reputation? She said slowly. On purpose. Your reputation is already a lie, I said quietly. This way at least the lie is over. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh, but not the happy kind. Do you have any idea what that would do to me? She said. To my social circles, to my board seats, to my daughter. I have some idea, I said, because I've been living with what your choices did to me and my daughter for a year. My kid lost her mother and her home and her sense of safety. She asks me if the person who hit Mommy is ever going to say sorry. I tell her I don't know. I'm giving you a chance to change that answer. Stick around, I told her, and I guess I was telling myself too. Because what happens next, if we do, this will blow a lot of people's minds. We didn't decide everything on that bench. We just sat there, two people on opposite sides of a wound, staring at the same hole in the ground. In the weeks that followed, there were lawyers. So many lawyers. There were threats, too. Her husband's old attorney, Victor, called me and said things like, "You understand, Mr. Carter, that going public would expose you to scrutiny as well. People will dig through your past, your finances, your parenting is. That really what you want for your daughter?" Classic intimidation. I told him to put everything in writing. He didn't. There were also compromises. We negotiated the settlement again this time, without the NDA gagging me completely. I agreed not to sue the company into the Stone Age in exchange for a public acknowledgement of responsibility, a fund in Tasha's name for hit-and-run victims, and a commitment from Olivia to stand beside me when we announced the legislation we were pushing for. The DA was complicated. On one hand, he wanted the recording, wanted the confession, wanted to show he was tough on wealthy offenders, even dead ones. On the other hand, prosecuting a corpse is more theater than justice, and he knew it. In the end, he held a press conference announcing new information in the 8th and Willow case, blamed the failure to act earlier on legal barriers, and pledged support for our proposed law. The media went crazy. Some called me a hero, some called me a sellout for accepting money from the same family that wronged me. Some painted Olivia as a villain who only came clean because she got caught. Others as a tragic widow making amends. Comment sections were war zones. Here's the part that really did blow my mind. Olivia actually showed up. On the day we announced the Tasha Carter Road Safety Initiative, she stood on that stage with me, cameras flashing, hands gripping the podium so hard, I thought she'd snap it. She looked smaller, without the perfect armor, more human. I told my story the way I'm telling you now, minus the cursing. I played a small clip of Daniel's confession. The crowd gasped. Reporters shouted questions. Then she leaned into the mic and said, "Everything Mr. Carter has told you is true. My husband hit his wife with his car and left her there. I knew, and I did not do enough to stop it or to atone for it. I chose my comfort over his pain. I have to live with that. This fund, this law, they don't erase what we did, but they are the least we can do to ensure fewer families go through what the Carters did." You could feel the air shift. Some people cried. Some glared. Some looked away. Accountability is uncomfortable, especially when it wears designer clothes. That law didn't pass overnight, of course. Nothing good ever does. There were hearings and amendments and lobbyists trying to water it down. But we kept pushing. We brought in other families, other hit-and-run victims. Maya testified in a little voice about losing her mommy at a crosswalk. Eventually, it passed in our state. There's talk of taking it federal. So here's where I land at the end of this long, messy story. Do I forgive Daniel Caldwell? Some days I think I do. Some days I don't. He looked me in the eye and told me the truth when he didn't have to. He also made choices that killed my wife and unborn son. Both of those things are real. Do I forgive Olivia? That's even harder. She sat on the truth for a year. She tried to quietly buy my silence. Then she stood up and torched her own image to do something right. I don't know if that balances the scales. I don't even know if scales are the right way to think about this. What I do know is this. My daughter is in a safer world now than she was the night her mother died. Intersections in our city have cameras and better lighting. Hit-and-run penalties are harsher. There's a fund helping families who can't pay for funerals or counseling. When Maya rides her bike, she does it on a street with a sign that says, "Slow down, in memory of Tasha Carter." We moved into a little house with a yard. There's a tree in the back that Maya calls Mommy's tree, and she hangs drawings on it when she misses her. The money from the settlement paid for that. Yeah, so did my pride. So did every night I sat at this kitchen table wondering if I'd sold something sacred or used the tools I had to carve something better out of the wreckage. So I'm asking you, was I wrong to take their money and their help while also dragging their truth into the light? Should I have burned everything down on principle, even if it meant my daughter growing up in the shadow of that choice? Or should I have stayed quiet and just built a good life with blood money? Would that have been better? Do you think that's fair? The weight we put on victims to make the right moral choice after their whole world's been wrecked? I don't have neat answers. This isn't a movie where justice rolls the credits. It's my life, and it's my kid's life, and I'm still figuring it out as I go. What I do know is this. Next time you hear about a hit and run on the news, next time you see a little roadside memorial with flowers and a teddy bear, don't just shake your head and say, "How sad," and keep scrolling. Remember there's a Malik behind that story, a Maya, a Tasha. Remember that somewhere there might also be a Daniel and an Olivia sitting in a big house telling themselves stories about why their silence is justified. And if you ever find yourself in a position to speak up to tell the truth even when it costs you, I hope you think about this story and do a little better than they did the first time. So tell me in the comments, if it were you, what would you have done with that recording and that settlement offer? Would you have forgiven her for staying quiet? Or do you think people like that should face prison, no matter what good they try to do? Later, do you believe money can ever be part of justice? Or is that just a fancy name for a payoff? I really want to hear your take on this. Argue with me. Agree with me. Tell me where you think I messed up, or what you would have done differently. And if this story hit you anywhere in your chest, share it with someone who drives too fast, someone who thinks leaving the scene is ever an option, or someone who believes rich people don't get away with more. Because at the end of the day, I'm just a mechanic who loved his wife, trying to raise a brave little girl in a world that didn't love her mother enough to stop at a red light. If my pain can push even one person to hit the brakes to stay to call 911 instead of a lawyer, then maybe, just maybe, Tasha didn't die for nothing. Thanks for listening. Now it's your turn. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done?